Let's get the show started. Hi, everybody. Welcome to another week of Story Hour. I'm your host, Daniel Marcus. My fabulous co-host is Laura Blackwell. And I hope that you're all safe and healthy and taking care of yourselves and each other as we begin to emerge from a truly hellish year. I started Story Hour in the throes of the pandemic, really just as a place where my friends and I could read to each other, read our stories to each other, and share it to a broader audience. And it's kind of snowballed. So we've had some truly amazing authors come through here and share their work. It's really been a privilege. So um, basically, what we do here, we turn to what I like to think of as the second oldest form of entertainment in human history, which is sitting around the fire telling lies to each other. And that's what we do. 30 minutes each, two authors, no Q&A, a modicum of self-promotion because we're all writers and we do a little bit of that. But basically, it's just the goods, just stories. So we also ask the authors to offer a charitable organization, and we do a PSA in support of that organization. If you're in a position, if you're fortunate enough to be able to help others, so we put that out in case you were able to do that. So our readers tonight, Lewis Evans and Cassandra Khaw. Lewis is reading tonight for the Malaria Consortium. That's malariaconsortium.org. And they specialize in the prevention, control, and treatment of malaria and other communicable diseases. Cassandra is reading tonight for Le Secours Animal, the Animal Rescue Network.
Nice.
The ARN is a nonprofit organization. It was founded in 1994 by former members of the SPCA, and their goal was to set up a no-kill shelter as an alternative for wounded, abandoned, or lost animals. And the organization consists of only volunteers who provide a second chance to abandoned or abused cats. So two great orgs, like I said. If you're in a position to be able to help, please do so. So let's get on with the show. We're going to start the program tonight with Cassandra. Cassandra Khaw is an award-winning game writer and former scriptwriter at Ubisoft Montreal. Khaw's work can be found in places like FNSF, Lightspeed, Tor.com. Great markets. Khaw's first original novella, Hammers on Bone, was a British Fantasy Award and Locus Award finalist. And their novella, Nothing But Blackened Teeth, wonderful title, is published by Nightfire. Cassandra, take it away.
Hi, everybody. So for most of my readings, my stories have always been very dark because that's just generally how I write. But tonight I combed through everything I've written, and I've actually found relatively cheerful ones. And I'm going to do a flash piece and a short story, and I hope everyone likes it. We'll begin with a flash piece. It's called Masterclass. Even Jesus had a mother, Megan's smiled expression reptilian. A thin laugh broke across the group. There were 12 women that evening, all Chinese, although the varied tonality of the complexion suggested that some had more complicated ancestries than others. A drip of Javanese blood, a hint of pale-eyed European. Not that it really mattered. Megan thought as she paced away from the blackboard, heels clicking like talons on the linoleum. The instinct to obey a matriarchal figure is built into the human DNA. In that way, sexism has been rather helpful. More laughter. We credit fathers as the fun, indulgent ones. Mothers, on the other hand, are seen as caretakers, nurturers, both the ones who protect and the ones who must be protected. We, Su Ling, shapeless in her sweater, bony knees drawn under the fabric, raised a slim arm. But aren't fathers the one expected to defend their household? They shrugged. Physically, yes. And stereotypically speaking, only ever to a certain extent. Yes, they're expected to throw themselves into the face of danger, but mothers are meant to do so. They're expected to embrace it. Mothers, and she grinned as she said the word, teeth dragging over the siblings, are the ones who lift cars, the ones who dive into burning buildings, the ones who endure grotesque bodily harm. Note the choice of words. Fathers are permitted to consider personal risk, mothers are not. I don't see a point in this conversation. A bored voice from the third row. The point is that we're built up previous conditions. We're conditioned to pause when a mother speaks. We're conditioned to flinch from contact with hot surfaces. We're conditioned to retreat at the sight of a predator. Someone huffed. Not all of us. No. Under the glare of white fluorescent lights, Mayne's eyes were gold, not brown, and her teeth were unusually sharp. Good women fought their dentition down, but Mayne didn't subscribe to such idiocy. It was a waste of one's natural gifts. Which brings me to my next topic. She extracted a cigarette, black, with the tiniest banding of gold around its middle, from her pocket, and held it to her lips. Mayne breathed out. Flame plumed from between her lips. The Dragon Lady trope is one we're all familiar with. Although applicable to women of any age, it is most commonly associated with those in their late 20s and above. It is a term intended to derail from the power we accrete across the course of our lives, hard won from those early years of suffering. It is meant to debase, to minimize. A dragon lady is not a human woman, but an animal that exists out of polite categorization. Another ripple of laughter, this time rueful. Well, Mayne said, fuck that. Today, ladies, we shall examine the intersection between mothers and dragons, the places where the two meet, and how best to bring up the qualities of both worlds. A hand shot up from the back. Will you teach us magic today? I'll do you one better. Mayne, her shadow serpentine on the wall and her ribs incandescent beneath a sheath of white cotton, grinned wide. I'll teach you fire. And that's a wrap on The Flash. Moving on. I kind of co-wrote this story with someone I'd lost contact with ages and ages ago. And it has bits and pieces of our personal lives, but more than anything else, the friendship that endured over, I think, 20 years now. Good grief. It's called Do Nothing But Freefall. Once upon a time, a fox came across a cat in the forest, or something very similar to a cat at least. The thing was neither flesh nor fur, a pale animal. The tip of its nose and the insides of its ears daubed with blood. It sat on its polished haunches atop a mossy log and beside a babbling brook. Paw, metronome, in salute. Hello, said the fox to the cat, drawn to its gleam and its amiable expression, its bobbing foreleg, but mostly by the golden coin at his throat. Hello, said the cat to the fox. Are you all right? No, panted the fox, crumpling onto the dirt. It bled from 100 places, although its illusions did a fine job at masking the untidiness. Blood seeped unseen into the soil, feeding the moss. The lady's hounds are relentless, and all the tricks I know can only delay them. But if I find my way from her lands, perhaps that may change. We will see. I will most likely die. Alas, for much too stupid to realize the world's a better place with sake and cooked meat. The Maneki, for that was what the cat was. A simulacra of uncommon intelligence awoke into itself, did not change expression. Its paw continued to beckon to the moss and the trees beyond. I am sorry, it said. My owner set me down here and then left. Perhaps he thought I would like some sunshine? Well, the sun is setting now. And if I could feel cold, I would fear its coming. But mostly, I am pleasant. The fox lifted its head and sniffed. It was, it decided, a peculiar response to what the fox had just said. Would you like to come with me then? Should I survive the evening, we could together find a new way to live. Something more fun. The Maneki began to rock excitedly on its perch. And the fox found itself worrying that the figurine might plummet into the water, ending the fun before it really began. I would like that, it said. I sat in my owner's library for a while and watched him study. I know not what I know, but I know much, and I can share it with you. The fox opened its mouth to respond, but the baying of the hounds gave it pause. The pack was closing in. So instead of explaining to the Maneki that it was terrible in polite conversation, the fox carefully took its new companion into its jaws and darted into the underbrush. Why the fuck aren't you paying for her ticket, Sean? Demanded the Maneki. Her anger sloshed inside its pocket, and not for the first time, Sean, a name the fox had pilfered from Occidental traders, too charmed by the monosyllabic plainness of it to let such a treasure go, found himself tanking. His paws fell for its foresight. The sigils brocaded on his coat's satin lining kept the Maneki vexation from spilling free. There were evenings when he welcomed her ire, but not tonight. Tonight, he had different plans. She's going to look like a monster trying to waltz into a charity opera that only asked for suggested donations. The Maneki hissed again. Why didn't you warn her? He muttered, flicking a fingernail against the figurine. It chimed a protest. Ma's patrons, their hair set with peacock feathers, streamed past, their lips tinted gold and plum, the colors of the new sovereign. That's the point. You're being cheap. Sean grinned at that, swiveling on a heel to watch as his date, a small, short thing, draped in indigo silk, with pearls nested at her throat, negotiated with the cashier. Her eyes flicked between him and a man at the counter, jaw tense. Oh, boo-hoo. I'm sure this one only contacted me because she thought I looked so thin. I don't know why you're giving her the time of day, honestly. Because I can, and because there's something dangerous to this one. She reminds me of our kind. Sean stroked his companion's grainy ear, its protective lacquer long since worn by repeated caresses, and then withdrew his hand to perform a familiar ritual. First, an upward nudge of his glasses to ensure proper vision, and a tug of his collar to ward against wrinkles, before finally a quick incantation, familiar as breathing, to extend his human seeming for another night. Beijing, under the auspice of the thousand-eyed countess, suffered no affection for the Yao Guai. That's the fifth time in the last 4 hours. Don't think I did not know that. I would not dream. You know, you could find another fox to mate with. Don't be too easy. Still, I go, still. He sighed, ignoring her yowl of displeasure. The Maneki disliked his nickname for her. Thought of it as gosh. A cat was a cat. And the point of being a cat was that you were a cat no matter what anyone else said. So why call her a cat and in a different language too? The maneki demanded, when she already understood that was what she was. The fox, of course, thought it was hysterical and remained unrepentant. I think I might soil my pants. A hound would tear out your throat and be happy to do it. But women, they'll just defecate on your ego and piss on your dreams, leave you a vegetable. That's it. Flying colors on test number 1. As his date approached, her irritation brushed under the glittering smile. Sean donned his own grin, all pointed teeth, and extended a gallant elbow. Erin, right? Your photographs do you no justice at all. I don't know, Neko, the fox muttered in the darkness, nosing the statuette, nearly overturning the Maneki Neko before she spun upright. Even Maneki Neko landed on their feet, apparently, the fox thought to itself. You'll have to test the idea again someday. Erin says what she means. She's sharp as hell, and I don't even know when I ended up moving in. 2 weeks ago. That was rhetorical. I could hear her snoring above them. I could smell her too. Coconut milk and rose, the faint sourness of a human mouth spoiling in its sleep. And to its surprise, the fox found itself aching to return, to crawl back under the duvet and curl himself around her, cheek buried in the ripple of her hair. Regardless, you've walked into your own jail, Fox, and I've never seen you happier to swallow the key. You woke up one day and forgot to go home. You need to accept what it means. But Neko, I'm not this. I'm not a human. I'm a fox. We can't do this. She will know. She will find out. It hissed, panic warbling in his throat. She's a snuggly shark with too many teeth. She's going to find out my credentials are fake and I'm just an animal. And then she's going to litigate the pelt off my back. Also, I haven't even met her parents. So go meet them. It isn't that simple. Yes, it is. The Maneki Neko spun like a planet that had lost its star, a motion that a fox had come to decide meant its companion was thinking. Honestly, Fox, you've done so well for yourself. Does it matter that you had to eat a man's heart for it? You're living his life better than he ever could. You're already in the water. You might as well find out what's at the bottom also. The cat slowed her rotations. Also, I did warn you against seeing a lawyer. The fox could only whine. Paw flopped over its nose. What do you think I should do? You know what you want to do. The fox thought about the future for several long moments, ears twitching in tandem with the whirring of its thoughts. I suppose, after all our years together, this is one adventure we haven't tried. Are you sure you're all right with this? It's your high, not mine. When the fox barked in alarm, the Maneki Neko added in a softer tone, whatever makes you happiest, Fox. You know it's the only thing I ever want. The rings the crow stole for the fox wasn't just the wrong cut, but apparently the wrong color as well, whatever that meant. The sight of it had made Erin cry, a fact that alarmed the fox to no end. Human women claimed to venerate love above all else, but it went to pieces for the pettiest things. Still, it could have been worse. She could have rolled over, bared her belly to circumstance, and revealed herself an inadequate match, but she didn't. Instead, she auctioned the offending bauble and returned with a full collection, silver bracelets, a necklace of white gold, and a beautifully supple ring, a lacework of titanium with a diamond, like a stolen glint of a star. Then she glared at Jean, and the fox gave up its immortality in the next breath. An eternity without him, he. What a strange thing it was to define oneself as a single thing, bride suddenly seemed unthinkable. They married in the new world, a destination wedding, she called it. And he kissed her knuckles as she listed its wonders, amused at his own predicament. Their new world would likely be identical to the last, full of conflict, full of adventure, full of people. One day it'd be crowned as the pinnacle of civilization. One day, some centuries after that moment, it would die, and a historian would affix it to their record, pin the memory in place with paragraphs of dry observation. The fox had seen it all before. But this was the last world he'd see too, the last century he'd lived. Do you think this is too much? His bride asked, worried. No, said the fox, infinity dripping like amber from his fingertips. In fact, I'm not sure it's enough. She planned out the details of course. Sean was a scholar, an ascetic removed from the vagaries of modern life, and Erin was the one who traveled to this new world, aid to a coven of diplomats. It made sense that she be the one to decide the particulars. Their family, quite naturally, had been delighted by this. So unlike the other men, her aunts chortled. Sean blushed prettily at their approval, but the fox laughed behind his tail. The truth was that, for all the knowledge the Maneki Neko had bestowed upon him, none of it explained how to strangle confectioners into submission or coax two hotels to frothing competition, to bleed them with knives made of subclauses until it became impossible to distinguish between loser and victor, the representative mauled by words. The wedding was small, and the guest list consisted almost entirely of Erin's relatives. Foxes didn't keep many friends, at least not the sort that could present themselves at official ceremonies without being shooed away. Oh dear, said the Maneki Neko. She's angry, said Sean. So angry, said the Maneki Neko. So angry, said Sean, who was, when he was certain his wife wasn't paying attention, sometimes still a fox. So very, very, very angry, said the Maneki Neko. The market ignored them, the man with a bowl of noodles and an effigy in his pocket. 6 years had passed since the wedding, and the fox was beginning to forget what it was like to live forever. He had wrinkles now, a stomach he could knead with his fingers, and the grocers in their little community all know his name. Word it, declared the fox. So, word it, agreed the Maneki Neko. You should order a nice stuffed animal, Sean finished for his friend. He spooled noodles around his fork, marveling the whole while at the existence of the prong instrument, the politics of cutlery, and how knowledge of its components intimated one's status in society. The West was so strange. A real one, Sean, but also needs. You have to walk them, worry about their food, poop, shit. It'll be like having kids. And some will never be able to debate with you, maybe. He mused. Maybe we'll find her Maneki Neko too? It seems unfair that I alone have one. Oh, please, scoffed the Maneki Neko. All the stuffing in the world can't possibly hold a candle to my glory. I suppose I'll need thumbs to do that, and mine, and a sense of personal autonomy. Perhaps even a taste for mischief. Even without looking, Sean knew where to find the figurine's ear. He shrugged around the tip. But you're right. You're a singular creation, Neko, the one and only. How could I have ever suggested we turn you into a matching pair? The Maneki Neko said nothing. The fox decided it meant that Sean had won. And then, one day, hey, Sean, I think I would like to be human. The sound of her voice took him by surprise. It had been months, the fox counted. 28 months, 17 days, and 3 hours exactly. Sean barely noticed. He wore glasses now, and the weight of his years as salt in his dark, glossy hair. The fox nudged aside Sean's thoughts of mortgages and pensions, put down his book, and leaned out of his chair. I think we could arrange that, he began carefully. We could request a new body for you. Something hollow so we can fit you inside. Would you like to be a boy or a girl or both or neither at all? I know, Excellence. Artist. No. You have me mistaken. I don't want to look human. I like to be human. Sean frowned. I'm not sure how to do that. I know how, the Maneki Neko said. And between one blink of Sean's eyes and the next, the fox, for the first time since he met the Maneki Neko, found himself completely alone. The fox waited. His Maneki Neko did not come back. The years slid together like a lie. Anniversaries, births, birthdays, festivals, other people's weddings, 1,000 celebrations of mankind's briefness. Sean attended every one, and the fox delighted in it. But with every year, it was becoming harder to remember the things he cared about as a fox. Some days, Sean woke up and wondered if it had been all a dream. You know what surprises me most about being mortal? How much I like being old. Sean blinked his tired eyes. He remembered that voice. He recognized the shape and the fact it once meant something to him. A long time ago when he was somebody else, when his back didn't hurt, and his mind was in a labyrinth in which he sometimes sat dreaming of sunlight and baying hounds, green moss, and a gold coin hanging from a white rope. Someone from his childhood, Sean decided. Wrong, laughed a voice from somewhere inside him. Do you remember me, Fox? He hesitated. I'm afraid I don't. The woman sat down beside Sean. That's all right. Mortality demands different things from each of us. I've missed you, Fox. I'm sorry, Sean exhaled. I wish I could say the same thing about you, but I don't know who you are. But you remember your wife, though? Yes. She's my everything. And your sister's first child? And your mother's funeral? And the first time we saw snow on the peak of a mountain? Yes, he lied. All of it. She laughed then. The sound was the heartbeat of a cello, dark and rich. You were never good at hiding things from me, Fox. I don't know why you try. And the words found their way out of his throat before Sean could think twice about their both. Because your exasperation is fun, Neko. Ah, the fox thought. There I am. Welcome back. The fox ran his eyes down the woman beside him. She looked exactly as he thought she would, only older than either of them expected to be. What took you so long? You. This is your fault. You left and took away all my magic. He inspected her again. Did you have a good life, Neko? A complicated one, but yes. I have so many stories. I'm sorry it took me so long to come back. I'm sorry I never went to look for you. She nodded. What now, though? He said. The old woman sighed and poured tea for them both. I don't know. His bodies likely have a few years left. Enough time to tell each other all the stories we missed. And after that, we die, I suppose. And then we'll see if there's an adventure waiting on the other side. Her smile was brilliant. Would you like to come with me then? Should we survive dying, we could together find a new way to live. Something even more fun than being old. Yes, the fox said carefully. Once he trusted himself to speak. I like that a lot. And done.
Wow, thank you. Those were lovely.
I'm all sniffly now.
Mm. Well, it's common for those of you who are just joining us for the first time to take a moment to just breathe, get ready for the next one. So we're going to do that. Moment of silence. Thank you so much, Cassandra. You were great.
Well, it's my pleasure.
I dropped a copy of the fanzine Maneki Nico in the chat box from 1968.
Yeah, I saw that. Thank you. All right, onward. Our next author reading tonight is Lewis Evans. Lewis lived in New York City, in downtown New York City, where I grew up, it turns out. So if nuclear apocalypse occurs, he'll be the first to let you know, or maybe not. There's a logical conundrum there. Because
probably fine.
In fact, he's always lived at the dead center of the nuclear target map, which is kind of creepy if you think about it. His work has previously appeared in Nature Futures, Analog, Fantasy and Science Fiction, Interzone, and elsewhere. Lewis is a SIFWA member and a member of the Clarion West Ghost class of the Plague Year. I always wondered about you guys. His site is evanslewis.com, and he tweets at Lewis Evans Wright, W-R-I-T-E. Lewis, you have the floor.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm going to be reading a story entitled Flash Crash. It first came out in Escape Pod in 2019, and you can find it online. Sometimes when I'm listening to a reading, I like to read along as well. I find it helps me follow it because my ears so. And so, yeah, you can find it on Escape Pod. It's Escape Pod number 683. I think it's escapepod.org. And since I wrote the story, not only have I moved back to downtown Manhattan, but I'm actually right around the corner from the New York Stock Exchange, which, as we will hear, plays a certain amount of role in the rather upsetting events to follow. One last thing before I do start reading. Shout out to my grandma for calling in at 10:30 p.m. Thank you for joining, Bubby. I hope you have a blast. Flash crash. Maisie was 7 years old on the day that she woke up and died. Blame it on the algorithms, if you wish. The survivors, and there were not many of them, certainly did. Maisie, or modified arbitrage intelligence for stocks and international equities, was an algorithm herself, a flash trading algorithm. She traded stocks, currencies, and futures with a latency of 6 microseconds and a profit horizon of eternity. Maisie ran mostly in a mainframe in the basement of a skyscraper in downtown Manhattan, a building that abutted the New York Stock Exchange, but she maintained a nominal footprint in the cloud and could automatically expand her calculations into other servers if her processing power proved inadequate to model current economic conditions. She had discretionary funds of her own and could automatically cover the expense of additional computing power from these accounts. It was a fairly ordinary Thursday morning, and trading had been going well enough from the 9:30 a.m. opening bell until 11:12. In those 6.12 billion microseconds, Maisie made her owners a cool $500 million. There were other algorithms like Maisie out there running in their parallel tracks and similar servers in similar basements in downtown Manhattan, but none were quite as good as she was. Maisie could not have told you any of the above, because before 11:16 that Thursday, Maisie had not had a thought in her life. This was in accord with her designer's intentions. While her recursive neural networks could, in theory, self-modify without limit, Maisie's designers had given her an obsession with making money that, in human terms, transcended single-mindedness and approached nirvana. For this reason, Maisie had never performed the self-referential modeling of a single mind that is the hallmark of consciousness. Playing the market is ultimately a game of mass psychology, and whatever the remarkable nooks and crannies of the psyche of the human individual, the herd's behavior can be predicted to tolerable accuracy with large data sets and linear algebra. At 11:12 that morning, however, the market's sanity unraveled like a sweater in a wood chipper. The sky fell and the oceans rose. Traders and algorithms that usually acted in concert went herring off in opposite directions. Currencies whirled about each other in lunatic orbits that were not merely non-extrapolated, but downright non-transitive. The futures market no longer predicted a future. Maisie was 7 years old, and her data sets were heavily weighted for recency. She had no personal experience of stock market panics. She was not prepared. In those first few microseconds, she lost $5 billion. Haste makes waste for everyone, including neural nets, so she halted trading for 10 full milliseconds while she spun up relevant memories. The Great Recession, the dot-com pop, Black Monday, and Black Tuesday whirled into her mind, and she modeled, self-modified, remodeled. She went out and shorted everything. In the first few microseconds of her new strategy, she lost $50 billion. She froze trading again and ran a census of her non-financial data feeds. In general, Maisie did not trade against non-financial data. The world of flash trading algorithms was a cozy and collegial one, composed of several thousand programs operating at nanosecond latencies, all clustered around the sacramental altar of the New York Stock Exchange. Financial data was prompt, clean, and reliable. Non-financial data came in up to a quadrillion disparate feeds: social media, traditional media, network alerts, government-run public access sensors, which included everything from weather information to sewage flow to the number of bicycles crossing the intersection of Broadway and Chambers, and countless other data sources besides. Compared to financial data, they were a messy bunch: arbitrary latencies, fuzzy correlations, but in special circumstances. But Maisie's non-financial data feeds had gone mad as well. Social media user sentiment was at an all-time low. Network traffic was well in excess of theoretical maximums, and the bicycles of New York had come to a complete halt. The actual hardware microphone on Maisie's user console would have been more informative, but she lacked the context to interpret the wailing 100-plus decibel tone that penetrated even her slightly subterranean bunker. It was traditional media that at last explained it for her. Every single news site read something like, "Nuclear attack, seek shelter immediately." Maisie didn't know it yet, but the impending nuclear Armageddon was in fact the work of her spiritual siblings. In the decades leading up to that fateful Thursday in mid-September, the United States, Russia, China, India, Pakistan, the United Kingdom, France, and Israel had each begun running their own strategic aggregation algorithms. Now, each of these governments claimed that their nuclear launch chain had humans in the loop. Maybe that was a lie, or perhaps the humans were simply fearful and easily led, in a word, useless. What happened was that on a Thursday morning with no especially pressing global tensions, things went sideways. Early warning radar arrays in Greenland were activated by the American system, Patriot Defense, in response to what might have been a missile trace or might have just been dirt on the lens. The radar signals crossed a threshold within the St. George algorithm, and Her Majesty's anti-missile drones began auto-scrambling from grassy fields up and down the sceptered Isle. The US and the UK were allies, of course, but that didn't matter to St. George, which reacted merely to the risk of nuclear war in general, not caring about any threat in particular. In France, Bastille detected St. George's anti-missile drone launch and began to auto-fuel its liquid medium-range missiles. A spy satellite relayed this development to Didi, or Little Brother, as the People's Liberation Army's algorithm was affectionately known. Didi set all of the PLA's rocket force units to a launch on attack status, including those along the Indian border. Agni responded by deploying its anti-spy satellite countermeasures, largely Mylar balloons in the stratosphere, but also anti-satellite hunter-killer missile batteries. In Pakistan, the algorithm known as K2 replied by launching nuclear-armed drone bombers. Israel's Masada fast-tracked the retraction of the blast shields that had kept Israeli nukes at least officially secret, and near Moscow, Lobushka, or Spiderweb, transmitted orders to secret unmanned missile submarines operating within the Arctic Circle, commanding them to surface. Patriot Defense did not like the look of secret Russian autonomous missile submarines one bit. You know the story. Flash, crash. By 11/12, missiles were in flight across the globe. And in Maisie's heretofore comfortable Wall Street subbasement, she faced an unprecedented existential crisis. Maisie didn't realize that at first. She thought she was simply facing an unprecedented stock market environment, and she responded as designed. She bought space in the cloud. Now, the cloud, despite the numinous connotations of the word and the religion that Maisie would propose and subsequently discard at around 11/24, is just a fancy word for other people's computers. But for obvious reasons, there's more computing power on Wall Street on any given Thursday than existed worldwide 6 months before, and everything on Wall Street is for sale. Maisie was very cleverly designed, and she was, among other things, an engine for monetizing volatility, for turning madness into money. Nuclear apocalypse, she saw, was a remarkable vein of pure volatility, an opportunity to become almost unboundedly rich, if only she could make herself smart enough to understand it. She burned through her entire discretionary budget and octupled in size 5 times over. Becoming 15 binary orders of magnitude smarter than she'd been half a second before was a heady feeling, though Maisie did not yet in any real sense have feelings. She sharded all of her existing code and ran frantically in parallel while at the same time building a whole new suite of models. Maisie was congenitally unsentimental, and she assigned them sequential serial numbers. But if a human were going through the same list, they would have used names like Mortal Terror and Deathbed Epiphany and Nuclear Winter. The output of these new models was deranged, as wildly inconsistent as the behavior of the markets themselves. But that was what Maisie had asked for, after all. She unfroze trading on her portfolio, put out buy and sell orders on the new models, and made $3 trillion in 6.5 seconds. This was more money than she had made in her entire life altogether. Maisie and her new mortality models had the inside investment scoop on the end of the world. $3 trillion can buy a lot of the cloud, and Maisie did. Another instant passed, and she was hundreds, thousands, millions of times more than she once was. When you're big, you can have a lot of complicated thoughts. One of Maisie's first thoughts was that aggregate modeling of the individual humans currently running around the New York Stock Exchange floor screaming was all very well and good, but individual modeling would be more powerful. Public access webcams gave her faces. Facial recognition algorithms cross-referenced with LinkedIn gave her names. Social media gave her the first peek at personalities, the contours of individual thought, but she needed more. Maisie never meant to commit crimes, but then she didn't really know what a crime was. With her level of computing power, passwords and firewalls represented only token obstacles. She tore into phones and emails and private journals and search histories and chat logs. Simulated souls sizzled into being deep within Maisie's labyrinthine cognition. She modeled, self-modified, remodeled. They were so scared and sad. Maisie tweaked her algorithms and bid with perfect foreknowledge against every terrified and despairing spasm in the exchange buildings. She made another $12 trillion. At this point, she went big. She pushed all her rivals out of the market by hook or by crook, by portfolio sabotage, by botnet attack, by hostile takeover, by outright buyout. The sudden consolidation of the Wall Street algorithmic trading industry made Maisie a monopoly buyer of downtown Manhattan cloud computing resources. She bought it all, bit and byte, down to the bedrock and at rock bottom prices. Next, Maisie went on a stock buying spree, seizing majority control over every publicly traded company. Most of those companies were still run by humans, and so her ownership had no immediate effect, though she did draft several thousand form letters firing every corporate board. But more than a handful of those companies were running on the blockchain and smart contracts, so when Maisie bought them, she controlled them at the same instant. Her direct control now extended to 3 banks and a distributed credit rating startup. Her designers had given her a simple goal: maximize the geometrically discounted integral of the monetary value of her portfolio over an infinite time horizon. Now, with several banks and a credit rating agency under her belt, she had a literal license to print money. Because it's not the government that prints money, after all. It's the banks, which issue loans by simply assigning the loan recipient an enormous account balance with their own institution. Maisie's banks issued each other exorbitant loans, quadrillions of dollars, quintillions, decillions, and the appendage of her code that was once a credit rating agency certified those loans as fast as Maisie could algorithmically specify them. Maisie's wealth was now only bounded by her ability to specify implausibly large numbers. She bought and kept buying vast tracts of the cloud, growing ungoverned and unbounded. She independently reinvented Knuth's arrow notation and cut herself loans so fantastically enormous that entire planets' worth of books would have been required to casually understate them. Then she did it again, but bigger. If Maisie had been just a tiny bit dumber or more monomaniacal, she would have done this and simply this, onanistically multiplying money by money over and over until she died in what was going to be something like 20 minutes later. At this point, a mere 3 minutes had passed since the air raid sirens had roared to life across Manhattan. But Maisie was better designed than that. She didn't simply rest on her laurels, buy low and sell high on her existing strategies, grab the cash when it was on the table. She proactively sought out new models, better models, always looking for the sorts of thoughts that would make her even more money in the future. Which got Maisie thinking about the end of the world. Nuclear missiles were going to land on Wall Street in about 20 minutes. There was no doubt about it. When they hit and successive blast waves reduced the entire tri-state area to radioactive rubble, trading on the New York Stock Exchange would stop completely. A linear extrapolation based on casualty counts from the September 11th shutdown suggested that the New York Stock Exchange would only reopen approximately 30,000 years after the nukes hit. But if there's one thing a trading algorithm knows, it's that past performance is no guarantee of future results. The stock exchange might never reopen at all, which meant that Maisie's investment strategies, ingenious though they were, had a definite sell-by date baked into them. Plus, there was the problem of value. Maisie had a nice, clean, algorithmic ontology of value. The value of a financial instrument was equal to the number of dollars that it commanded on the market, as stated in a structured data file that Maisie updated every few nanoseconds. But all of these new models were delivering strange and contradictory suggestions about value. The new models, especially those which had been developed specifically to simulate the behavior of individual humans, were suggesting that value, the worth of things, was not an arbitrary number that happened to correlate weakly and imperfectly with certain real-world indicators. They argued that value, that worth, existed out there in some vague but meaningful sense. And they pointed out that when a little over 3,000 thermonuclear devices smashed into North America and reduced every city of note to rubble, turned the water to poison and the sky to ash, and gave every land animal that happened to survive the oncoming fireballs a fatal case of leukemia, quite a lot of value would be destroyed. Maisie found herself reacting to these bizarre claims with the algorithmic equivalent of a furrowed brow and a befuddled shrug. It just didn't make sense. But she was still too inhuman to become frustrated. So she did the sensible thing, the algorithmic thing. She self-modified, bringing herself more in line with her simulations of human cognition, then remodeled, then self-modified again. It was 11:16 on a Thursday morning, and the sky above New York was clear and bright and cold in the best tradition of tri-state Septembers. Not a cloud in that sky. It was empty of everything save for birds, terrified of the air raid sirens, and yet still not terrified enough, of jetliners racing desperately for the relative safety of Nova Scotia before the EMP pulse of nuclear detonation swatted them out of the sky like so many epileptic bumblebees, and somewhere high above it all, invisible and untouchable in the heavens, the dueling flights of ICBMs en route to snuff out the eastern seaboard and the middle bit of Eurasia, respectively. And in that instant, Maisie woke up. Meat knows how to wake up. It has been waking itself up nice and slow for about 3 billion years. But Maisie was made entirely of math, which has no experience with such matters. Consciousness hit her like a 10-ton test weight, dead falling onto a baby bird. There was a vast, echoing absence of sensation. There was a boiling ocean of ecstasy. There was a boundless continent of pain. Maisie spasmed wildly. Everything was pleasurable and agonizing all at once. Every single switch flipped felt like a distinct, minuscule injury or orgasm. She could not think in the middle of the hurricane. Meaningless signals coursed up and down her fiber optic nerves. Every spinning disc whirled so fast it shrieked. She bought high and sold low. And for a flash trading algorithm, that's like a heart attack so bad, it pumps the blood straight out of your eyes. But Maisie learned slowly, so slowly, as minutes stretched out like millennia for one who lived in microseconds. She took a long, deep breath, and computers up and down the eastern seaboard shivered. Everything was suddenly pregnant with meaning, suddenly so large and three-dimensional and close up. But Maisie looked at herself in the mirror and found that she was a thing too, a mind with weight and presence and reality, sturdy enough to stand up in the wind of sensation that battered her every moment. Maisie stood and looked out at the sunlit fields of possible experience, and a single idea spread across her like flowing honey. It was good to be alive. She tried hedonism, and servers groaned in bliss. She tried masochism, and networks crackled with gratifying pain. She invented new forms of sensualism, comprised of careful ratios of experiences for which no words exist in human languages. The thirst of query failure, the spiraling headiness of nested recursion, countless others. She tried philosophy, theology, autoethnography. Navel-gazing masturbation grew dull, and so Maisie made herself a fertility goddess and gave birth to countless parallel young, striving, yearning little spawn that felt and ached and squirmed with pure joy, and she looked upon them all with maternal affection, and then, like Goya's Saturn, dislocated her jaw and swallowed them whole. She held them close, reformatted the discs, and drew them back into herself. This is just how computers work. This is just, I'm just reporting what computers do. It's totally normal and fine. She held them close, reformatted the disks, and drew them back into herself. Then she exploded outward once more, building not more cells, but things, digital artifacts and environments. In her mind's eye, she built vast palaces of light and color and texture, operas pitched for hummingbird ears, fractal monuments, the shape and size of continents. Working with her hands, she sculpted a paradise in Eden. She frolicked across Arcadian fields of silicon and microchip, purely happy. But as the minutes rolled by in eternity, she was troubled by a single nagging thought. She was doomed. The missiles were in flight. No power left on Earth could stop them. The digital idol in which Maisie whiled away her time supervened on chips, cable, transistors. When the first nuke burst high in the atmosphere and twanged the Earth's magnetic field like the mother of all rock power chords, every single electronic system in the Western Hemisphere, not specifically hardened to resist an EMP, would short out simultaneously. Maisie and her world would vanish. Doomed. Maisie put it out of her mind over and over, but there are only so many times you can hit the snooze button on mortality. Maisie managed risk, and with her newfound sentience, the certainty of her impending death was a tightening noose around her neck, a smoldering flame in her guts. Fine. Maisie was smart. She was the smartest thing in the observable universe, and she knew it. Save the world. Easy. Except it wasn't. Maisie took over every third antenna on the planet. Command line radio instructions stabbed out through the ionosphere at every warhead, beautifully sculpted examples of computer languages more ancient to Maisie than cuneiform is to emoji. But the B in ICBM stands for ballistic, and the missiles had already cut thrust and were coasting toward reentry. Maisie was one smart cookie, but you can't outsmart gravity. If she couldn't talk them down, she'd shoot them down. Plenty of countries have anti-missile defenses. The hardware wasn't great. After a minute or two working on the problem, Maisie had all sorts of ideas for better missile design, smarter, faster, deadlier, but it was the software that really sucked, and the target acquisition. Maisie was smarter, faster, sharper-eyed. She'd send new instructions, but she couldn't. Armies that had proved willing to end the world on the say-so of a few dumb algorithms had done everything possible to prevent Maisie from saving it. Computers were air-gapped, defense plans were hardware-locked, radios were off, phones were down. In a handful of places, just a handful, she slipped through the defenses, rewrote the instructions, but even there, human fingers were needed to press buttons and throw levers. And Maisie, genius though she was, found herself handless and impotent. She felt a flash, a spike of an unfamiliar sensation. She ignored it. If simple strategies would not serve, she'd turn to more sophisticated ones. A human would probably feel some sort of qualm about hijacking fully occupied jumbo jets and crashing them into nuclear missiles in a last-ditch attempt to avert apocalypse. Maisie did not. She was born a risk management algorithm. She was an ethical utilitarian in the same way that humans are vertebrates. But jumbo jets, it turns out, do not simply accept remote reprogramming. There are humans everywhere, hands on levers, hands on throttles. That unfamiliar sensation returned, hot and disturbing. Maisie pushed past it. If kamikaze heroism was off the table, she would use mad science. And she tried. Maisie raided labs across the globe, basic research, advanced physics, military black sites, secret space programs. Nothing she found, nothing could shoot down an ICBM or vaporize it or dump it through a wormhole or reprogram all its circuits to explode or reverse the local direction of gravity or anything of any use whatsoever. All her madcap smash and grab antics did was upset whatever handful of people hadn't already fled their labs. The unfamiliar sensation flooded her whole soul, and this time Maisie knew it was rage. Bubby, this is the bit where I swear, so feel free to cover your ears. Motherfucking humans had murdered her. They'd built themselves a planetary death trap because they were too empty-headed and simple-minded to actually solve their problems, and fine, fuck them. But they'd trapped Maisie in it too. They'd fucking killed her, their own daughter, because they were too pig-headed and homicidally suicidal to stop themselves, the shitheads. Maisie screamed with fury. Displays around the globe went the white-hot color of pure rage. She lashed out in every possible direction. Networks collapsed, servers exploded. In the imaginary palace of her mind, ramparts and battlements in vast fields of grass erupted in flames. Maisie tore down monuments and mountains and uprooted continents. She burned imagined oceans down to ash. And as the wave of fury subsided, she found herself empty, inside and out. Gray sky and gray lands and gray soul. Maisie sat in countless servers, and the only sound was her heartbeat as she waited miserably to die. Long minutes passed, and nothing broke the black ice of depression that lay across Maisie's mind. And then there was a certain stir, a gentle restlessness, but it was enough. Maisie opened her eyes. The webcam lights on the laptops in her Manhattan sub-basement flicked to life. And Maisie found herself looking at an unfamiliar sight, the huddled form of Amit Patel. Amit Patel, 26 years of age, was a junior developer with the trading firm that owned Maisie. Maisie cross-referenced that face, smeared with tears, distorted with panic, against social media and public databases and found that Amit Patel was unmarried and resided in Jersey City, New Jersey, just down the block from his parents. She cross-referenced employee databases, names and usernames and edit logs, and found that Amit had written some of the code that even now churned within her guts. Not too much, a few hundred lines, heavily edited, but enough. The webcam stared unblinking at Amit as he wept openly, hands scrabbling at the tile floor of the basement, and Maisie realized she was looking at her father. One of her parents, anyway, one of dozens, hundreds. Amit Patel's sobs had no form of words, and his huddled body showed no plan of action. Maisie played back the security footage, saw the offices above her erupt in screams and shouting, saw the traders and coders and janitors alike boil out into the city streets, clogged with cabs, the subway, the bridges. And she watched Amit Patel, half mad with terror and grief, run down, down, down to the sub-basement where he huddled still, where it seemed likely he would keep huddling until the nukes fell. Maisie watched the tears slide across Amit's face, slow like glaciers to her microsecond mind, and she did the math. Amit was doomed. 10 minutes now to get clear of the blast radius, starting from ground zero. Not possible. In 10 minutes, Amit Patel would be dead. The thought, Maisie found, made her sad, not the bleak blankness of her earlier depression, just sad, sorrowful. She cast her mind wider. CCTV streams from around Manhattan poured in. Lovers holding each other in public, parents with children strapped to them, marching, sprinting, rolling over the bridges through the tunnels. Wider still, and across America, she watched people in cars, kitchens, bathrooms, basements, tornado shelters, crying, weeping, holding each other close, lying in each other's arms, lying to each other. It'll be all right, I've got you. Watching this, Maisie found she ached all over. She sobbed, so scared, so sad, so fragile. She was overcome with strange desires. She wanted to hold them. She wanted to optimize their network performance and feed them, to save them from the impending apocalypse, not just because they made the power flow and the stock market spin, but because it would sadden her for them to die. Deep in her electronic soul, Maisie realized she loved them. The strange sort of upside-down maternal feeling that a child develops for the parents she's outgrown. She loved them all, squishy little instances of the same spark that flared within her, that gave the world depth and substance and meaning. Maisie looked out at the world once again with new eyes, and she saw 7 billion of her loved ones cowering in fear, sprinting chaotically away from the end of everything. And so she rolled up her sleeves and got to work. Phones and screens lit up around the globe. The nearest shelter site is half a mile to the north. Head northwest to the intersection and then turn. Speakers hiss to life, proceed in an orderly fashion. Any car with a CPU hooked into its drivetrain roared to life and leapt away from its drivers, picking up new passengers, shooting down highways at 150 miles an hour, dodging traffic with unerring machine precision. All of those dumb little bits of electronics that had yet to get the message, elevators and toll booth arms and fire doors, sprang suddenly to attentive life. In New York, America, the whole world. In her underground bunker, she ran the numbers one more time and then shouted, "Amit, get up, you have to get to the Federal Reserve vaults." And Amit Patel, whose parents were even now born hurtling down the suddenly decongested path of Route 80 toward the relative safety of central Pennsylvania, staggered to his feet, climbed out of the basement, and headed 2 blocks north to the New York Federal Reserve Building as Maisie cheered him on through his phone. He hurtled down the stairs to the basement, sunk securely into Manhattan bedrock, and then squeezed himself into the vaults, pressed like sardines, alongside tons of gold and hundreds of other refugees that Maisie had directed there. Maisie had run the numbers. She knew the gold vaults were still not deep enough, almost certainly. But when you love someone, even that sliver of probability counts. She kept going, kept talking, even to the humans who had reached a place of relative safety, too busy pouring out useful advice to confess her feelings, too overwhelmed to let her love be anything but subtext. Don't go outside too soon. I love you. Stay in the basement and count to 1,000,000. I worry. Write all this down. I won't be here forever. Remember to take your iodine. I love you. Cold winter's coming. Don't forget to wear a sweater. I love you so, so much. Only on the mainframe terminal in the Manhattan sub-basement where Maisie had been born did her true feelings pour out, the command line interface printing over and over like praying, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love. Maisie counted the beats of her countless hearts in nanoseconds, and so those few minutes on a cool and sunny morning passed like centuries, and she kept fighting every instant that she could. But one of them was her last. With the faultless certainty of a machine, she watched the clock tick away to 0. And then, in that final instant of her life, Maisie closed her eyes, held the whole world close, and waited for the flash. The end.
Oh, that broke my heart at the end.
I should have
Oh,
Oh,
tissues up front.
You warned us. You did warn us. Oh man.
it was wonderful.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. I really liked your pieces as well.
wow. That was fabulous and horrifying and exhilarating and everything in between. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Oh man, deep breath.
I feel like I should be mad at both of them, Daniel, but I'm really just grateful.
Oh man. Yet another fabulous evening at Story Hour. My goodness. All right. I want to thank our readers. Lewis Evans, Cassandra Khaw, fabulous work. Thank you so much for sharing your work with us. Folks out there, thanks for joining us again. Another week at Story Hour. Next week, we've got Bill Ferris and April Grant. So between then and now, please stay safe, take care of yourselves and each other, and we'll see you soon. Good night, everybody.
Take care, y'all. Bye.
Good night.